peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
It is ridiculous and it is against the laws of nature that we can have somebody sitting pretty who takes home more money than the credible entrepreneur who is doing actual production of goods and services.
We always say it as it is.
It is only in this country that when a thief is arrested, you hear elders from their tribe saying, "He is our son and he is our thief."
If you are deviant
Yes.
and I call you leader,
Yes.
probably you are already a leader, but you are leading in the wrong direction.
We want to see the role of the youth
Yeah.
in the security,
Yes.
governance,
Yes.
and development.
The youth that I meet and work with here, you know, we call them the millennials and X's and Y's, this and that. They don't necessarily want to live like their fathers and grandfathers,
Yes.
do business like their fathers and grandfathers. They're more independent, they're better educated, and they're the ones that are making everything move in this region.
We look at the issues, we talk about issues that impact people's lives in Africa.
The African peoples themselves continue to cheer bad leaders, and because they cheer them on, they continue to be misled.
Let me ask you, doctor, would you rather be somebody who does not enjoy so much freedom but you are rich?
Yes.
Or you'd rather be poor who you are actually imprisoned by the poverty itself?
My goal is not to come here and say, I want the majority ownership, I want to own this, I want to own that, I want to do this. My goal is we all make money and we're all happy, and I help build a big business here.
Punchline is for Africa, with Africa, from Africa.
Fellow Africans, since 1957, when Ghana gained independence, there has been quite a lot of political, social, economic indicators on the African continent that show that Africa has progressed from pre-independence Africa to post-independence Africa.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
66 years down the road, Africa finds itself with the first country, Ghana, having gained independence. We find ourselves still locked up, controlled, manipulated, instructed, logistically supplied, equipped by foreign powers that dictate our agenda. Africa is endowed with plenty of minerals, resources, good weather. The climate is so favorable for the growth of food enough to sustain us. But we find ourselves in a country where hunger is killing people. Hunger is killing people because most of the people have taken to arms to fight wars, conflicts. Starvation has taken the place of development. In most African countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, in Biafra, and north of Nigeria there is Boko Haram, Somalia in the Horn of East Africa. We have taken to conflict instead of development. Development was the key indicator When Kwame Nkrumah made the first speech that seek ye African political unity, economic development will come automatically, he was right. The events happening in Libya today vindicates Nkrumah, vindicates Nyerere, Sekou Toure, and Nasser, the founding fathers of our Pan-Africanism. The events happening in Central African Republic, in Congo today, as the war of rebels ranges on between the rebel and the rebels and the government and the government, and the rebels vindicates the founding fathers of this revolution. Our independence, therefore, was only on paper. Our independence, therefore, was only in symbols. Our independence also was in signs. Our independence also was in boundaries. That we received our flags, but we never received full independence as by the word independence. Most of the 3/4 of African countries, French-speaking countries, have their budgets being done in Paris. Is that independence? The Paris government or the French government does its budgets based on how much they will get from African countries. Is that independence? Is this the Africa that you want? Is it the Africa that we must look at? Is it the Africa that we shall leave for the future generation? If the answer to you is yes, then so be it. But if the answer is no, you agree with me that this is not the Africa we want to live for the future generation. Our generations and the future generation need to find a legacy. What is the legacy that Africa and African Union will leave for the future generation? The wars ranging in Libya, in South Sudan, in Khartoum, in Mogadishu, in DRC Congo, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, Boko Haram, Mali, in Mauritania, the uprisings in Algeria, all point to one thing, that yes, we are not yet independent. We are still controlled by external forces. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to you, wherever you're watching us. And first of all, I'll start by apologizing for our late broadcast today. We had a bit of some technical issues we were taking care of, but all is well. Thank you so much for joining us and for your patience. I see a lot of you are already writing to us and have already joined us in all our platforms. We thank you so much. This is a Good Morning Africa show, and the show is My Opinion. Of course, Dr. Matanga will not be with us today. There's some things he's taking care of, but I'll just take you through what we have today. And in case you've not heard, in Kenya, yesterday, a high-profile arrest was made. This is a Standard, one of the leading newspapers here in Kenya, and what the Standard is saying on the headlines, how police are closed in on Rotich and 27 others. And it continues to say, this is in regards to the dam scandal, and detectives have CCTV footage showing top politicians engaging Italian officials, and have also traced how cash moved from Treasury to London, Dubai, and back to Nairobi. And I think that is the same, that is all the headlines we have in all our newspapers. This is the Daily Nation, and what the Daily Nation is saying is that how graft was brewed at Treasury, and it continues to say that kickback-driven procurement has always been the pest of government projects, and the National Treasury, which ought to police state agencies, has been part of the mess. Now the chickens have come home to roast. Indeed, it is a good afternoon here in Nairobi, and the weather is quite good, sunny, and it's quite warm, but it's not very warm and sunny to, Treasury CS Henry Rotich, who right now, among other 27 people who are arrested together in this dam scandal, are actually in court as we speak, and the court has started at the Milimani Law Courts here in Nairobi, and also the Star newspaper here. It says police on high alert as DPP hits Ruto's stronghold. Well, this has taken a very political approach. The headlines here, and it says Henry Rotich, PS's Kamau Thuge, that is the permanent secretary of Treasury, and Susan Jemtai plus 25 others spent the night in police cells to be charged today. And maybe we just look at that, page 4 and 5 of the Star newspaper here. Just see what it's saying. And it says that police were on high alert last night in many parts of Rift Valley after Director of Public Prosecutions Nordin Haji ordered the arrest of 28 people, among them Treasury CES Henry Rotich. The alert was issued soon after Haji announced the arrest of Rotich, long-serving PS Kamau Thuge, and East Africa Community PS Susan Jemutai on suspicion of financial misconduct related to the construction of Aurora and Kimorel dams. Now 25 other people were arrested in a move that sparked security fears. Most of those wanted come from Rift Valley and worked for Kerio Valley Development Authority. So that is according to the Star newspaper here in Kenya. So we will look at that and other news making headlines here in Nairobi. But first of all, I'd just like us to go quickly in what is making headlines across Africa. And of course, we start with Ethiopia, where soldiers and federal police are due to take over security in parts of south of Ethiopia after unrest that has left several people dead, according to an announcement on regional state television. The new security measures come following a request from the authorities in the southern nations, nationalities and peoples region. The announcement said the aim is to ensure the rule of law and to protect the public, according to Ethiopian authorities. And we go to Gambia, where a Gambian army officer has accused ex-President Yahya Jammeh of ordering the murder of a journalist. AFP news agency has reported him saying in his testimony to a Truth Commission. Deida Haidara, who was the editor of the local daily The Point newspaper and a correspondent for AFP, was killed in 2004. The Gambians Truth, Reconciliation and Repatriation Commission was formed to establish a historic record of the nature, causes and extent of violations and abuses of human rights committed during the period July 1994 and January 2017, a specific period encompassing the 22 years rule of now exiled leader Yahya Jammeh. And in Tunisia, Rashid Ghannouchi, the influential leader of Tunisian moderate Islamist Ennahda party, will stand in the next parliamentary elections in October, a move widely seen as an attempt to seek a leadership position in the country. Exiled in London for about 2 decades during the time of former President Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali, Ghannouchi has been a major force since Tunisia's 2011 revolution, but he has never run for any official position. And in South Sudan, the move to ban the singing of the national anthem at public events where the president is not attending has caused a public outcry, Juba's iRadio reported. On Monday, the station had quoted Information Minister Michael Makwei as saying that the anthem is not meant for everybody. He was reportedly referring to instances where it had been sung at events attended by junior officials such as undersecretaries and governors to honor their presence. And in Somaliland, this week, Somaliland Foreign Affairs Ministry said it will push ahead with efforts for recognition whether Somali likes it or not. Somaliland government agreed to engage with the government of Somalia in the service of border regional cooperation and mutual understanding, but will not be held hostage by its insurgents. Ministry spokesperson Yasin Hagi was quoted as saying. And we go to Chad, and for 16 odd months, Chadians were cut off from social media platforms, that is Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, with the main government justification hinged on protecting internal security. No amount of appeals, protestation, and even a legal challenge succeeded in getting connection to the restored of internet users. In March 2019, an appeals court struck out an application to force the government to restore access to social media, but the security consideration argument of the state was upheld. But right now, Chadians can now enjoy their social media platforms. And in Zimbabwe, one of Zimbabwe's vice presidents has been flown from a hospital in South Africa to China to receive medical treatment. A presidential spokesperson has said General Constantino Chiwenga, 62 years old, has been suffering an undisclosed illness for the last 2 months. The former army of chief led the 2017 military takeover that forced Robert Mugabe from power and installed President Emerson Mnangagwa. He subsequently appointed one of Mnangagwa's deputy vice presidents. And we go to Cameroon, where the United Nations says 1.3 million people are in need of assistance as the humanitarian situation in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon continues to deteriorate. The UN said around 1,300 people were reportedly displaced last week, and that attacks resulted in dozens of civilians' deaths, hundreds of houses set ablaze, and widespread looting of civilian goods. Farhan Haq, deputy spokesperson of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, said that there's 2 regions the situation continues to be characterized by human rights and protection abuses and violations. Now, the conflict in Cameroon's Anglophone regions has displaced more than 500,000 people since it broke out in 2016. And in Kenya, Kenya has now unveiled Africa's largest wind power plant, a project aimed at reducing electricity costs and dependence on fossil fuels and moving the nation to meet an ambitious goal of 100% green energy by next year. The sprawling wind farm of 365 turbines on the shores of Lake Turkana in northern Kenya was designed to boost the nation's electricity supply by 13%, giving more Kenyans access to power at a low cost, President Uhuru Kenyatta said during the launch last week. And in Nigeria, a 23-year-old trainee journalist, Precious Owolabi, is now confirmed to have died after being hit by a stray bullet during clashes between members of pro-Iranian Shia group and security forces in the capital, Abuja. Deputy Police Commissioner Usman Umar also was killed. The pro-Iranian Islamic Movement for Nigeria says that at least 11 of their members were killed in the violence, while dozens of others were injured, and the authorities have not given a death toll except for the saying that one of the officers was killed. And in the DRC, the health minister in the Democratic Republic of Congo has resigned from his post in protest at the presidency's decision last week to take control of the response of the Ebola outbreak in the east of the country. Oli Ilunga's resignation letter decried that he described as interference in the management of the response to the outbreak, the second largest in the history of the country. He also criticized outside pressure to roll out a second experimental Ebola vaccine against his wishes. Since last August, more than 1,007 people have died from Ebola in the DRC. And in Mali, the British government says it plans to send 250 troops to Mali next year to join the UN mission, which is fighting against jihadist insurgency. The British contingent will carry out reconnaissance patrols, gathering intelligence on possible threats in parts of northern Mali that are hard to reach. Until recently, the Dutch military had been responsible for its work there, and since 2013, more than 100 UN personnel have been killed in attacks in northern Mali, making it the world's most dangerous peacekeeping mission. And in Tanzania, newly appointed Minister of State in the Vice President's Office, Union and Environment Affairs, George Simba Chawene was sworn in on Monday after President John Magufuli fired his predecessor, Mr. January Makamba. Nzenga Urban MP Hussein Bashe was also sworn in as Deputy Minister of Agriculture. Speaking shortly after the two had taken their oaths, President Magufuli said there was a lot of sluggishness in the ways tasks were handled at that ministry. And we end with South Africa, where South Africa's largest court has ruled that the public prosecutor, the state official in charge of investigating corruption, had lied under oath and acted in bad faith. The devastating judgment will add weight to claims that Busisiwe Mkhwebane is involved in a dirty tricks campaign to undermine President Cyril Ramaphosa and halt his campaign against high-level corruption. Last week, Ms. Mkhwebane ruled that Mr. Ramaphosa had misled Parliament and should be investigated. Her critics say she is being used by supporters of former President Jacob Zuma, who is also fighting corruption allegations himself. That is the latest this afternoon from across Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. Please let me know where you're watching us. And Jude, as a youth, you're saying military opened fire and killed 4 in a prison in the Cameroons. Please let us know. Is there a specific region? Is it the Anglophone region? Please let us know, and maybe the name of the place. Thank you so much for that information. According to June, one of our viewers here, as a youth, he's saying that military have opened fire and 4 people have been killed in a prison in the Cameroons. Can you let us know which part of Cameroon is that? And Akujobi Blessing, you're saying there will be no peace in Nigeria until the country zoo is divided. And Peter Lam Loan, you're saying that are great questions as we need to change. We are still controlled by our brothers in the world, indirectly colonies still in Africa. Did you watch how the UN, the US and Belgium combined to kill Patrice Lumumba for saying that Africa must gain economic independence? The video is on YouTube. I have watched Peter Lam Lul. I have watched that video, the murder of Patrice Lumumba, and it is quite disturbing. Every time I even think about it and the manner in which he died, at the end, I think they must have cut his body into pieces and things like that. It's quite disturbing. Thank you for that, and thank you for watching. A King Noya, you're saying kudos, Punchline Africa. Thank you for joining us. Prince Gabriel, you're saying good morning, Matanga. Dr. Matanga is not here with us today. And we had a bit of a technical hitch earlier on, and that's why we started our broadcast a bit late, an hour late today. But don't worry, you are in safe hands. So I was just going through Flat Flow. You're saying you're watching us from Germany. Here it is good afternoon. There, I think it's still Guten Morgen, I believe. Yes, thank you so much. Cletus Okwe, you're saying the only answer is Biafra. All right, so as I was saying, we had a bit of some technical hitches in the morning. That's why we started our broadcast a bit late at noon, and Dr. Matanga has very pressing matters that he needed to take care of. Probably join us in our next broadcast. But as you know, I'm through with what is making headlines in Africa this morning. So let's just look at a few countries and then we can proceed with the show. And of course, there's the Gambia's Truth, Reconciliation and Repatriation Commission was formed, of course, to establish a historical record on nature, and human rights abuses that happened during the former president's rule, when he was in power, 22 years in power, Mr. Yahya Jammeh. A lot of bad things happened, especially in regards to human rights abuse. And so this, commission was formed to try and to reconcile the country and for people to come out and give their testimony. There were murders, arbitrary arrests, and things like that used to happen during Yahya Jammeh's, leadership. Right now, I think he's in Equatorial Guinea. He's over there. He's sought for asylum there, and so a lot of things, and I think is it a month ago, a certain model came out to say even the president raped her in his office. He'd gone there, I don't know for what, for an official visit to the president's office, and she was raped in the office of a former president. He raped this model in his office. That is Mr. Yahya Jammeh, who is now in exile. And so this person came out. Deida Hidara was the editor of one of the local dailies there in Gambia, known as The Point newspaper, and he was murdered. and apparently the president. So now this soldier came out yesterday to give his, testimony, and he said he was ordered to murder this journalist. So very heart-wrenching testimonies there from Gambia. Continue writing as you're writing. Let me just read a few of your comments here as we continue. And Caleb's. Your name twice. All right. You're saying you're watching from Cape Town. How is Cape Town this morning? It is afternoon here in Nairobi. And Edmond Onunze, you're saying Biafra is what we need in Nigeria. And thank you so much, Biafrans. We had a wonderful show on Sunday, I believe. And we're looking at, was Nigeria, sliding into genocide? And we're basing our conversation from a letter that was written by former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, addressing his, concern within runaway security that now has engulfed many parts of Nigeria. And he was addressing it, of course. It was an open letter to President Muhammadu Buhari. And we had a great show on Sunday evening. So thank you so much. You made the show great. You wrote in, you shared your opinions and what was happening, and of course, you cannot stop hoping for one day Biafra to be free and for Biafra to be a state. So we will continue, highlighting these issues. And thank you so much for even engaging with us. And I see a lot of you are present here today. Thank you so much. Akujo be blessing you, saying I also suggest I get a lead of the IPOB for an interview. All right, I'll get this message to Dr. Matanga. I'm sure he can make something happen. And William Aja, you're saying Nigerian's chief judge of Nigeria is Sharia lawyer. People let the world know that Nigerian judiciary is controlled by Sharia. And also on this, what do you call it? This settlement, I'm forgetting it. Can you remind me in Nigeria that they want the herdsmen to be settled across Nigeria. I'm forgetting it. It has is it Ruga or Ruka? One of those, yeah. So it is. Some critics are looking at this as a way that President Buhari is seeking to Islamize the rest of Nigeria, because much part of the north part of Nigeria is the Fulanis and their Islam. So it is seen by the government wanting to set this Ruka settlements across the rest parts of Nigeria. The critics there are arguing that President Buhari is trying to Islamize the rest of Nigeria. It's Ruga, sorry. Thank you so much there for your correction. The Ruga, yes, the rural something settlement that President Buhari has been seeking to do there. So thank you for that. Damion Ekene, you're watching from Hamburg in Germany. Guten Morgen. You good? God bless Africa. God bless Biafra. John Odosen, you're saying you're saying we need help in Nigeria. Yes, IPOB Western Cape, raining heavily in Cape Town. All right, that's good. Rain is a blessing as long as it's not really floody. That is causing a lot of problems. And Jude as a Yusuf, you're saying Amazonians illegally detained started a protest in a highly secured prison in Yaoundé, that is the French Cameroon. And you continue to say they demanded the Minister of Justice and Prime Minister to come and address them. Rather, the military was sent and they opened live bullets on those protesting. We now get reports that Amazonians in that prison were ferried overnight to unknown destinations. The world needs to know about this. Well, those are very worrying reports there, Jude. One of our viewers there had mentioned earlier that I think 4 people were killed in a prison in Yaoundé there. And now he's just giving us the details and what has happened. Thank you, Jude, for that information. And indeed, the world is watching and the world is listening to this. So hopefully something will be done soon. And of course, I think I read one of the news here about what is happening. And the United Nations now in parts of Anglophone is saying the United Nations now says that 1.3 million people are in need of assistance as the humanitarian situation in Anglophone region of Cameroon continue to deteriorate. So this is the latest report from the United Nations. So what is happening in Cameroon really is worrying and is beginning to get international attention. And the UN has been giving a very worrying reports from what is happening there. And the latest is 1.3 million people in Anglophone region is facing a dire a situation, humanitarian situation there. And the UN report continues to say that around 1,300 people were displaced last week only. 1,300 people have been displaced last week only in Anglophone. That is a lot of one too many people, and that the attacks results in dozens of civilian deaths and hundreds of houses were set ablaze and widespread looting of civilian goods. So this is according to a United Nations report. Houses are being set ablaze, villages are being set ablaze, schools are not open in the southern, in the Anglophone region of Cameroon. So it's a very bad humanitarian situation there, and even the United Nations has agreed. And of course, the conflict in Cameroon's Anglophone region heightened since 2016. So very sad story there. From Cameroon. So keep writing to me, and as you do always, it's a pleasure to know where you're watching us from, and in case there's something else happening out there that you feel should be brought to our attention and to the rest of our viewers, please kindly just write and let me know, and if I come across it, of course I will read it. And Cosmos Egwe Umba, you're saying we must continue. You're saying, I believe, in matters Biafra. And William Ajaya, you say Druga. Yes, thank you so much, all of you, for your correction. Cletus Okwe, you're saying Nigeria is not working. All we need is Biafra. And Akujo be blessing, you're saying people are dying every day in Nigeria. How can Nigerian government give shelter to number 4th terrorists in the world? Fulani herdsmen, all we need is Biafra. And also in that letter, I wish I'd had it here this morning. I think I forgot to come with it on set. That we're looking at on our show on Sunday. I think former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, was saying that it's even more worrying that it is perceived that the Fulanis are the one who are meeting the rest, who are actually leading some of this violence and escalation of the insecurity in Nigeria. And the president coming from Fulani ethnic group, and he doesn't seem to do much, or his response has been very, lackluster. Former President Obasanjo was worried about that, and the fact that Fulanis are the ones who are being mentioned widely and extensively in regards to the runaway insecurity in Nigeria, and the president is not doing anything. So he was calling that to the attention of now President, Buhari, and it is quite a deep letter. I don't know if you've read it. It is long. Maybe after I could take a break and then just come and look through it with you guys. But yes, he mentioned a lot of things there that I think President Buhari should now really pay attention to. Otherwise, Nigeria is really headed to other things. And he's the one who actually suggested that if it's the insecurity, if they don't get hold of it, then Nigeria will slide into genocide. And he made reference to what was happening, to what happened, in the 1994 Rwandan genocide. It is beginning to take that form, because if one, ethnic group is seen to be the one who, are targeting another, that is what happened in Rwanda, the Hutu targeted the minority Tutsis, and we see what happened. So anyway, we hope that things will not really get out of hand, and President Buhari should get a hold of things in Nigeria. We see the Boko Haram is not only a problem in Nigeria, but it is a problem across even the neighboring countries in Nigeria are now getting affected. Look at Niger, look at Chad. I think I just read another news here from Chad. Look at Mali, look at Burkina Faso. These countries get affected, and Boko Haram is continuing to build and to gain roots and to flourish, unfortunately under the leadership of President Buhari. So this is something that should not be only a worry for Nigerians, but also a worry to the rest of us as Africans, because it is continued to get out of hand, and it is a security threat for the rest of the continent. So I think the former president was right to bring this to the attention of President Buhari. But the question is, will he even take action at all? What is he going to do? Remember, countries earlier, even the United States, South Africa, and other African, even nations have, even wanted and suggested that they could come in and offered their help in terms of trying to curb the insurgents of Boko Haram. But President Buhari was not very receptive of that. Matter of fact, he turned those offers down and he said, you know what, just give me time and I'll get get this under control, and he has failed to do that miserably. So it's worrying situation there from Nigeria. Keep writing. Celestine Ogomnaya Okoro, you're saying, God bless you, my dear. I'm watching from Brazil. Okay. Thank you too, and thank you so much for watching. Is it a good evening there in Brazil? Oh, good morning. I'm not sure. John Udosen, you're saying you're watching from Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you so much. And you're saying you are Biafran. All right. Thank you. Evans Juma, you're watching from Nairobi. And William Ajar, you're watching from San Antonio. Your program kept me up here in San Antonio, Texas. Yes, on Sunday, right? Yes, we had it up to very late in the night. I was there for the first hour, then I had to rush home. And then we had a lot of had a guest and another person join in later with Dr. Matsanga. But it was a great show, and we thank you so much for your participation. Wilson G. Chingo, you're saying you're watching from Italy, and you're an Ambazonian, and we need justice in Southern Cameroon. Wilson, I just received very disturbing reports from one of our viewers there, and is saying that some Ambazonians were shot dead in a prison. Apparently in Yaoundé, they were protesting over some conditions over there in the prisons, and the protesting, and the police came in with live bullets. You're already in prison and you're still shot. Come on, you're already in prison already. Is that not, is that not enough? How do you shoot anybody in prison? A prison officer. So they were shot. That is what we've received from one of our viewers there. Some Ambazonians were shot in a prison in Yaoundé there. Thank you so much for watching. Chi Biafra, you're saying the zoo is in trouble, call Nigeria. And Mount Onunza, you say, God bless Biafra, God bless Nnamdi Kanu. I don't know at the latest. I've been trying to see what Nnamdi Kanu is saying, even in the current situation in Biafra and the runaway insecurity that is also affecting Biafrans so much. And I don't know what is his stand on that, but keep writing. And in case there's something out there that you need to update me on in regards to Biafra, please, you're free to do that, and I will share it with the rest of the world. Ernest Nyuiki, you're saying, yes, we need justice in Southern Cameroon. Indeed, I'm with you on that. And I'm happy that the United Nations keep sending people there. And there's a time, I think the Yaoundé government even refused for help from the Red Cross to reach the Anglophone region, and it had to take some intervention by some international figures for them to even agree for some humanitarian assistance to be taken to the Anglophone region there in Cameroon. So it is getting terrible by the day there in the Anglophone region there in Cameroon. So yes. And in case you're joining me, I just read the statistics by the United Nations, the latest from yesterday. Let me just look for that. And they're saying that 1.3 million people are in need of assistance. And as the humanitarian situation continues to worsen in the Anglophone region in Cameroon. So things are not looking very well for the people there from Anglophone region in Cameroon. And all right, Peter Chweba, good afternoon. You're saying good afternoon, sir. It's good afternoon, me. Dr. Matsanga is out today. He has to take care of some things, but he'll be joining us in our next broadcast. But thank you so much, Peter, for joining. And you're saying, God bless Biafra, indeed. IPOB Western Cape. You're saying, Punchline Africa is the best in Africa, watching and listening carefully all the way from Cape Town. And we appreciate your support. So keep writing. Samuel Lay, you're watching from the United States. And Egbota Onyebuchi, you're watching from India. All right. And Chi Biafra, you're saying you're watching us from Luxembourg. And who else here? I see you kept avoiding to read out my post, so good luck. Who is this? I did not. Can you repeat it again, please? I would love to read it. Was it at the start? I didn't see it. And it's not intentional, please. So you can write it again. Nwaonye and Kozi there. Please, you can write it again, and I will read it when I come across it. All right, so continue writing. And Promise, you're saying you're watching us from Ghana. More grace to you all. You say you love Biafra. And Obi, Zebunia, Obi, you're saying you're watching from Holland, Amsterdam, and you are Biafran. And Emmanuel Ngala, you're saying yesterday the Anglophone prisoners of war were protesting in Yaoundé. Oh, yeah, that is where some of them were shot. And one of our viewers was sharing there earlier. And Remigius, you're watching Onachuku, you're watching from Germany. And Uche, you're saying Britain will not save Britain will not be safe if another war starts in Biafra. I think you meant to say Britain will not be safe if another war starts in Biafra. And Wadike, you're saying God bless Biafra. So keep writing to us. I was just looking at what's making headlines in Africa this afternoon, and we just looked at the latest there from Cameroon, from Amazonia there. And now we come to Nigeria, where also there has been war. There has been a religious war, I think, from last week, if I'm not wrong. And now in Nigeria, 23-year-old trainee journalist Precious Owalabi is now have been confirmed to have died after being hit by a stray bullet between clashes between members of the pro-Iranian Shia group and security forces in the capital. So there has been war between the Shia, the Muslims who are allied to the Shia group, and I think the other from Sunni. Remember, Shiite Muslims, especially, they're backed. Iran is majority Shia country, so they're saying that the pro-Iranian Islamic movement for Nigeria. Why is Iranian Islamic movement in Nigeria? They're having their problems with that, with the rest of the Arabian countries. Why are they dragging that religious war here in Africa? Because I believe, as much as there are different religions, even in Christianity, there are different denominations and things like that. But we don't use it we keep it very respectful. And even in Kenya here, we have a majority, a good number of Muslims and even Hindus and other denominations. But we keep it respectful. We respect other people's religion and their way of life and beliefs. So why is it now a problem? Has it ever been a problem that the Shiites and the Sunnis and or this Islamic religion and others who are allied to the different sects within the Islamic religion, has there been problems like that in Nigeria before, or why is it that it is happening now? Remember, that is the same problem that is happening right now in Yemen. If you've been following international news, Saudi Arabia is a majority Sunni Muslim country. And so it is backed by UAE, and a lot of their faith, I think, is really based on the Wahhabism. It's a whole nother, history lesson that I'm not willing to go to right now. But, Iran is majority Shiite Muslim. So they really don't see eye to eye. They can't even coexist. So there has been a war in Yemen, and of course Iran is backing Yemen forces, but Saudi Arabia, UAE, and the rapid force fighters from Sudan, led by Dagalo, they're also supporting Saudi Arabia, and so it is a religious war over there in Yemen. And the Yemenis, Yemen has been torn down by years of war between these different warring factions, and now they're bringing that to Africa. This is not acceptable. So this is something that has been happening, and you've had people being bombed near mosque when they're coming from worship, people being killed. So has President Buhari said anything over these new killings, over this new chaos that have been happening, rocking the streets over there in parts of Nigeria? Please let me know if there's something there even President Buhari has said. So I don't know why Africa is being sucked into this. It is terrible. Religious wars are not even something we want to see in this continent. Maxwell Oti, you're saying we need nothing but Biafra. And Gechukuchuku, you're saying you're watching us from Nuremberg. And Charles Chaco Ehidom, you're saying you're watching all the way from Buckingham in the UK, and you are a Biafran, a proud one for that. Gota Onyebuchi, you're saying United Nations should prevent this war that is coming to Nigeria by giving us Biafra instead of bringing humanitarian aids, and we do not want aids. We want freedom from Nigeria. We want to build our nation. Biafra is our last hope. Yes. And Oko Ajake, you're saying hello, Doctor and Miriam. Today I'm by myself. Doctor had some things to take care of, but don't worry, as I have said, you are in very safe hands. In case there's information you need to know, just click there, and in case the information you have for us, for the rest of the world, please share there, and I will share. I read it out loud for everybody else. And Clayton's okay. You're saying you're watching from Lagos. You're Biafran, and you're saying God bless Nnamdi Kanu. And the rest of you, Chinenye John, you're saying you're watching You're saying you're watching from India, I believe, and good afternoon. Please, all we need is freedom in Nigeria. One person can sit on that country's Nigeria saying that his father or their fathers own Nigeria. Please, all we need is separation in Nigeria so that peace will reign. Thank you very much, Ma. All right, you're welcome, and thank you so much for engaging with me this afternoon. So Nigeria is a ticking time bomb, as you can see, and former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, in his letter, he really mentioned these matters in extensive. I wish you could get hold of that letter by a former president and just read it to yourself. As much as there are a lot of things that the world does not agree with in terms of even how he led when he was the president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, but in this letter, I thought that he made a lot of sense, and he called out President Buhari on his laxity in terms of dealing with Boko Haram, and in terms of making sure that every Nigerian, was secure even within Nigeria. And so, so get a hold of that letter and you'll understand what I am saying. So in Kenya, of course, Kenya unveiled one of Africa's largest wind power plant last week. And the project is aimed at reducing electricity costs and dependence on fossil fuel and moving the nation to meet an ambitious goal of 100% green energy next year. They're very ambitious. Are planned there by Kenyan government, so it's kudos. President Uhuru Kenyatta is, moving the country in the right direction in regards to the green energy. So we're expecting the country to move fully 100% to green energy come next year. Very ambitious there. So I'll be here to see how that will happen, and of course we will keep updating you in that. What is happening? Interesting reports here from South Sudan, and now, okay. South Sudan is very dear and near to my heart because I grew up in Nairobi here. I grew up with South Sudanese because in the late 80s and 90s, that is where the war really broke. Remember during the times of Darfur and when South Sudan was agitating to form its own, state and self-independence, as what Biafrans are calling for right now and the Anglophones are calling for right now. And by the way, like say in the case of Biafra and what President Buhari wants to do with the Ruga, that is what actually was happening in South Sudan and when it was Sudan. And Omar al-Bashir seemed to want to Islamize the whole of, Sudan. But, as long as majority at that time were Muslim, but also they did not, the Christians or the other part of South Sudan, as much as they are also Muslims over there, but they did not want, even right now, the issue that was a contention when it came between the protesters and the army rulers was the army wanted to have a Sharia law as part of the constitution of Sudan, and the protesters were saying no. And a lot of them actually were Muslims. They're saying no because they're a bit liberal and they want to have some, freedoms that might seem to be infringed in case they adopt a Sharia law sort of constitution. So that is actually one of the reasons why that fueled the breakaway South Sudan from Sudan. Among other reasons, that was a major reason why South Sudan wanted to break away and finally broke away from Sudan. And I think with President Buhari, if he continues with this ambitious plan of having these Ruga settlements across Nigeria, and many states they mentioned that about 11 states were willing to give this a trial, but some of them have come out and said no, we don't think this will be good for our states. So he has not received a lot of backing over this, and the plan seems to have been halted at the moment. But he is quite determined to see that the Ruga settlements is something that happens under his leadership while he's still the president of Nigeria, and to have these herdsmen settlements set across all over in Nigeria. And so Nigerians are, of course, not happy for this. So if he continues with this, and the way critics are really looking at this from even a religious point of view, this might fragment Nigeria to levels where may not be very easy to recover from. So this is something that President Buhari really needs to consider and look at very keenly and be wise even when in the decision he'll make over it. Akujobi Blessing, you're saying, I quote Femi Adesina, Nigerian presidency spokesman, and he's saying, give Fulani your ancestral land or die. This is a clear indication that Nigeria is the chief sponsor of Fulani herdsmen killing in Nigeria. Okay, so that is the president's spokesperson who said that. Mr. Akujobi Blessing, you're saying you quoting Mr. Adesina, Femi Adesina, who is the president's spokesperson. So he said, you give the Fulanis your ancestral land or you die. That is a serious threat. And how has Nigerians responded to this? I've been reading a lot of, especially Biafran tweets on social media, and not just even Biafrans, even a lot of other Nigerians are not happy with this idea at all. Oko Aje, you're saying you're watching from Denver, Colorado there. All right, thank you so much. So now we were in South Sudan, and apparently President Salva Kiir is having a problem with the national anthem being sung when he's not present. As if South Sudan does not have enough problems, like pressing things to worry President Salva Kiir. So I'll just read that. It's just ridiculous. National anthem is not played for the president to appease the president or for the presence of the president. National anthem for us, especially in Kenya, the way ours has been written, is like a prayer for the country. You know, it's a prayer we say sort of when we sing it for the country. So it has nothing to do with, with the president. And it's sort of a commitment to us as Kenyans, to Kenya, not to the president who is in charge at the moment. So I don't know the wordings on South Sudan's national anthem. If there's some of you here, please let me know. And so now, in South Sudan, the move to ban the singing of the national anthem at public events where president is not in attendance has caused a public outcry. Like President Salva Kiir has banned singing national anthem in public events when he's not present. That is how we start our public meetings, if anything. Whether who is there or not, we sing the national anthem if it's a public event before the event starts. And as I said, for us, it's a prayer. For us, it's our commitment to our country. For us, it's in praise of our country and, a prayer to our country as well. So it continues to say, this is according to iRadio. And on Monday, the station had quoted Information Minister Michael Makwei as saying that the anthem is not meant for everybody. He was reportedly referring to instances where it has been sung at events attended by junior officials such as under secretaries and governors to honor their presence. All right, it happens here all the time. I don't think it's such a big deal, as Mr. Salva Kiir should focus on really the important matters right now, and that is finding a lasting peace in South Sudan and finding a way of having Riek Machar come back to Juba for them to continue to create an infrastructure that will lead to having a unity government, and finally South Sudan can enjoy peace. I think that should be one of his top priorities, not the national anthem and when it is sung and how it is sung. That is a non-issue. This guy has enough things that he should be focusing on right now. And remember, 2 weeks ago, deputy president, or his deputy president, who is now in Khartoum, Mr. Riek Machar, had written also a letter to the president, and he said he's willing to come back to Juba because he was worried that even after having gotten an extension of another 6 months for the peace process to continue, and that will lead finally to the unity government in 2 months that has passed. Nothing has happened, so now they're remaining with less than 4 months. Nothing has been seen to be happening. So Riek Machar was actually just, voicing his concern with the time wastage, and maybe they might not be able to do what they were supposed to be doing in these 6 months. So that should be the concern and priority for President Salva Kiir. If I was to advise him, let him focus on important things. National anthem, come on, let people sing the national anthem. It's patriotic, and they're singing it for the country. So after the ban, now South Sudanese took to social media and they were singing the national anthem and just posting it. It's just funny. You go look for that on Twitter. South Sudanese now decided, you know what? I'll sing national anthem in the toilet. I'll sing national anthem when I'm eating. I'll sing national anthem on the streets, and you can't do nothing about it because you know what? I'm patriotic and I'm South Sudanese, and I will sing it. Now what? So there you go. Romy Aljaljoki saying, preach, sister. Am I? This president looks like he has nothing else to do. No, surely. I saw that news in the morning and I thought, come on, President Salva Kiir. Ajab Mohammed Jabi, you're saying if Africa could be soaked by slavery, European participation of Africa, why should those reckless fighters don't find spaces when people like you are preaching further divisions? Do you think all people from those new rebel groups land in favor of the petition? The other day, I heard your man, you saying Dr. Matsanga, supporting Charles Taylor, not to have been in ICC anyway. Okay. There you go. Ajab Mohammed Jabi. All right, your sentiments. Thank you so much for writing. And please let me know where you're watching us from. And Samuel Lay, you're saying it's a political suicide for South Sudan president for him to say that the nation anthem will be sung when he is around. I know, it's ridiculous. Here we sing the national anthem anywhere. I mean, anywhere, especially in public functions, regardless of who is present there. And Pascal Stone, you're saying our leader Nnamdi Kanu has already tabled out concession to supply Southwest and North crude oil and gas for free when Biafra depart from Zoo, Nigeria, and promised to allow 5% members of United Nations, including Israel, to supervise it so that there will be peace in West Africa. But no, to opinion, this concession is only if we separate by peace. But if we go to war, we will defeat them, and this concession will be cancelled. That is according to you, Pascal Stone. Thank you for writing. All right. Chimazuru Silas, you're saying, if this war break out in Nigeria, we Biafrans are going to take it to the whole world where we meet Nigerian citizens. And we hope that this does not get out of hand. We're just praying that whatever happens there, it is going to be peaceful. But of course, Biafrans have been writing to us every day, and the news that are coming there, the government of Buhari has not been very kind to Biafrans. So there you go. Jamok Michael Pasimo, you're saying Africa must have focus on Buhari and Nigeria. War is looming. Indeed, war is looming. And the sad part is it's not only Nigerians or Biafrans who are going to suffer. The rest of Africa is going to suffer, because if one country is in turmoil and is in trouble, the rest of especially the neighboring countries, get to help carry that burden in terms of refugees and things like that, and insecurity that spills over to other countries. So this is a concern not only to Nigeria, and as a president, former president there, Obasanjo put it, it's not just a concern for Nigeria, but also this should come to the attention of the African Union. We keep talking about African Union here, and we know sometimes we wonder who do they even work for. If African Union has not even considered this, especially the insurgents of Boko Haram, as something they even need to call an urgent meeting to and talk about. I don't know who schedules the programs and the urgency of matters and issues in the African Union, but on this one, I think they're failing very much, and I think it's time African Union also showed leadership and convened a special, a meeting of some sort to look into the matter of Boko Haram and the insecurity that has engulfed the Sahel region, but now also spreading slowly and trickling down in other countries that are in Africa. So African Union needs to give this a priority, and they need to look at this very, very carefully before it runs out of hand. Ozias and Mtunzi, you're saying you're watching from Harare. I read another news from Harare this morning and yes, I wanted to just look at that. From Zimbabwe, Mtunzi, let me tell you something. Now, one of Zimbabwe's vice president has been flown from a hospital in South Africa to China to receive medical treatment. First of all, this is the first time I've heard that one of African leaders have actually flown from Africa and gone to China for treatment. Nobody goes to treatment in China. Our leaders here, you hear somebody has flown to Europe or to the United States if they needed, medical attention. But in this case, Constantino Chiwega has flown to he's 62 years now, and he has flown to China to receive treatment. Who goes to China to receive treatment? I know they have better facilities, of course, compared to Africa, but it's rarely do you hear that any African leader flies to China, or any African for that matter. We go to India if, for medical treatment for the people who can afford it, or to Europe or to other parts of the world, but not China. But so now, Constantino Chiwenga went to China to seek medical treatment. He has been suffering from an undisclosed illness for the past 2 months. And in case you're wondering why he can't go to Europe or the United States, well, there you go. He is under sanctions from the European Union and the US for his role in a brutal crackdown on the opposition and over the seizure of white-owned funds. Yes, so they're holding grudges there with the vice president, one of the many vice presidents. I was asking our producer this morning, how many vice presidents do Zimbabwe have? I've lost count. Please remind me, how many presidents do Zimbabwe have? So Mr. Chiwenga could not go to the Western world for medical attention, so he went to China. Of course, China's relations with Zimbabwe are deep, starting during the Rhodesian Bush War, and Robert Mugabe failed in 1979 to get a Soviet backing, so turned to China, which provided his guerrilla fighters with weapons and training. So our relationship between China and Zimbabwe apparently are quite deep. So Mr. Chiwenga is in safe hands, I can say that. So he's there seeking for medical treatment. So we wish him a quick recovery. He's been suffering from an illness that has not been disclosed yet to the public. Justice Okoye saying a government that the rule of law and make the national decisions by fiat is worse than a terrorist organizations. Okay. Jamok Michael, you're saying you're watching from Sweden. And IPOB Western, you're saying they'll kill and continue to call it clash, while the Nigerian government are the ones doing the killing. Please, let's stop calling it clashes. It is not. It is, you're saying it is targeted killings to other people who are not from a particular ethnic or group in Nigeria. That is what you're referring to. Okay, G-Best Odinya is saying all we need is Biafra to be free from Nigeria before peace will be in Africa. Victoria Deke, you're saying good morning from Biafra land. John Campbell Fraser, you're saying you're watching from Binghamton in New York. All right. Osiah Simpsons, you're saying thanks for reading my comment. Yes, our VP has flown to China for further treatment. Mtonzi, do you find it very weird that he's actually gone to China and not other places in the world? I've never heard anybody flow to China for treatment, but hey, I think following the sanctions that he has, especially on his head, he cannot go to US or any EU country, because after what happened earlier this year, when the government of Zimbabwe, President Mnangagwa's government, the soldiers beat and killed and maimed some protesters from the opposition who were protesting, among other things, the high inflation, the bad leadership, and of course, sections led by opposition leader there. They're still disputing President Mnangagwa's, win last election. They're saying, he was not duly elected, and the opposition then Zimbabwe continues to stand their ground, saying that the elections were stolen, the victory was stolen from them. So there you go. Samuel, you're saying it shows that a South Sudan president, a dictator, when say the nation anthem will be sung. Yes, that sounds like something Kim Jong-un would say. Like, you don't sing a national anthem without me there. What do you mean? You're a president, you will come and go, but the national anthem is for the nation and for the people of that nation to sing in regards to appreciating their country, showing the patriotism, and even like ours, as I have said, it is prayers for the country. Like the first stanza, it's prayers for the country. Oh God, our Lord of creation, bless this our land and nation. It's a prayer for our country. So when we sing it, it's much deeper than a president. It holds a deeper meaning to me as a Kenyan, and it does not have any allegiance to the president. In fact, even our loyalty pledge, we pledge loyalty, of course, to the president now and the nation of Kenya. That is where now the president is mentioned. But the national anthem, it's purely for the nation, has nothing to do with the president. So Salva Kiir there. But I'm interested in just perhaps if I could read the wordings of the national anthem in South Sudan. Maybe that will give me another perspective. But hey, even South Sudanese out there found it very weird. And as a matter of defiance, they went to social media, they taped themselves singing the national anthem, and they posted it. So now, there you go, President Salva Kiir. And Chimazuru Silence, you're saying they will kill us and we will kill them. Okay. We don't want any more people dying. Akua Oba, you say we need our freedom. We are tired of being among people who have no value for life. And Victoria Njindeke, you're saying no going back. We must continue. All we want is Biafra. Long live Namdi Kanu. Long live IPOB World Wild. All right, there you go. So I want to thank you so much. So we were just looking at what was making news in Africa today. There you go. As I have said there, Zimbabwe's vice president has been flown to China for further treatment. He's been quite sick for the past 2 months, and of course the reason why he could not go to the US or other places that most of African leaders love to go to seek further treatment is because he is under sanctions from the European Union and the US in his role in a brutal crackdown on the opposition earlier this year. And also, they're still holding grudges to him in regards to the seizure of white-owned farms. I think he was working under a former president, and Robert Mugabe. For his problems in the West started the last 20 years. Before then, he was a darling to the West, actually. But after his announcement that, the government of Zimbabwe was going to, the land reclamation and the land program that he announced he wants to do, and take some of these lands and give it back to the rightful owners who are Zimbabweans, who were uprooted from some of their lands. And so, when he announced that, that brought him into loggerheads with the West. And since then, Zimbabwe was put under very heavy sanctions. And as we have said here time and time again, according to records, Zimbabwe is one of the most sanctioned nations in the world. And so the sanctioning brought Zimbabwe's financial situations to good. From it was one of the most flourishing countries in Africa. It used to be the food basket of Africa, but right now we see Zimbabweans can't even afford a loaf of bread. The inflation it's over, by far the worst in the world. And since then, of course, the financial situation, the economic situation in Zimbabwe has worsened due to the heavy sanctions that were put on the leadership. They even sanctioned the party ZANU-PF, ZANU-PF is the only party that has been sanctioned in the world. You sanction a party. So if you were a member of ZANU-PF or you were part of the government before, it's a problem. And I think that is the problem they're having right now, even with President Emerson Mnangagwa, is because he was part of ZANU-PF, and he has some other scandals from before, as he was part of the leadership there with the deaths of some sections of Zimbabweans. He has some cases that some people have been even talking about, bringing to the fore right now. So I think that is the major reason why they're a bit unsettled by the leadership of Mnangagwa, because they consider him to be still part of Robert Mugabe, and because he worked in Robert Mugabe's administration, and they don't think he's no different from Robert Mugabe, and so they're quite uneasy, and so they refused to lift the sanctions. Matter of fact, the US extended the sanction of with a year, the same way they did, I think, with South Sudan, I believe. Yes. So there you go. So it is a problem there in Zimbabwe. And so the sanctions have really affected not just the leadership, who can afford to go to China and get treatment, but the normal citizens of Zimbabwe are the ones who are really getting affected by this. You can't trade outside. You can't do much, because when the economic situation is not okay, everything gets affected, even the quality of life there in Zimbabwe. So it's a very not so good situation there in Zimbabwe. Romy Ajal Joke, you're saying in USA, a football player couldn't play because he disrespected the anthem, and South Sudan president made it for himself. Happens only in South Sudan. Happens only in Africa, Mr. Romy. It's ridiculous. And you know why I think it's very ridiculous? Because President Salva Kiir has other pressing matters that should be worrying him, that are not even moving in the pace they should be moving, like the peace process. For heaven's sakes, South Sudan, according to World Bank, last year was able to make $2.4 billion US from the oil. But as we speak right now, the government of South Sudan is flat broke. They had to close down earlier this year 40 of their embassies across the world, not 39, and they had to recall 40 of their diplomats back home because they couldn't pay them. And the civil servants, they have not been paid for 6 months now, I believe. And so when South Sudan was celebrating a 9th anniversary of independence, that was it the other 2 weeks ago, it was not even a national celebration. There was no money to even hold a celebration for the country's independence. So those are things that should keep him awake at night, and the wastage towards the money that is being directed to the unnecessary war between the fighting factions in the country. Not a national anthem because somebody sang it in a public meeting. Come on now. He needs to get his priorities straight. Him and the rest of the African leadership we have that, are not serving us very well here in Africa. So there you go. Okay, so we've just looked at Chad and what is happening there. And for 16 months, Chad's social media was off. President Dabi's government had closed down all social media because you're saying some people are using it to want to bring a revolt. And I think also that is just a matter of time. President Dabi there, Idris Dabi. So Chadians can now enjoy, social media platforms. And social media platform is actually very powerful. That is how Sudan, the protesters were able to organize the protest. And so, yes, but now after 16 very odd months, Chadians will be able to enjoy their social media platforms again. So, and we also looked at Zimbabwe, and we also looked at Anglophone and the staggering figures now from the United Nations report that says 1.3 people now are in need of assistance and in dire humanitarian crisis there in the Anglophone region. And there's also another problem brewing here in Ethiopia, and soldiers and federal police are due to take over security parts of south of Ethiopia after unrest that has left several people dead. This is according to an announcement on regional state television. There is a section of Ethiopians who want to have their own region. So this is what happens when you have a government that you feel does not address your problems, that does not hear, does not engage. It gets to a point that people feel neglected, and now it is a result of that. Now the people start agitating for to have their own and to rule themselves and to have their own independence. So this is also posing another problem for Ethiopia. There's something that is a brewing story, and every waking day there's something coming out of Ethiopia. Something is not very right. I remember over a year ago, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, together with the Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki, after years of Ethiopia and Eritrea not getting along, I think 20 years, when Abiy Ahmed came to power, he tried to mend the relationship with the Ethiopia, with the neighbor there. And they opened the border that had been closed for a very long time. But even with that, I think Eritrea's side is still having problems. And the president had visited, I think, Ethiopia last week, and he was seen driving his host, from the airport to the place to where they were going with President Isaias. Their Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed drove his host. And he's trying really to extend friendship between the two countries and to just normalize the diplomatic relations. But President Afwerki is not very open to that. Remember, Eritrea is one of the countries that is so closed in Africa. It's really very difficult to access any information. And President Afwerki is ruling there with an iron fist. He's a dictator par excellence. Internet there, don't even bother. It is so slow that you can't. And now here the social media was closed down for the last 16 months. He does whatever he wants to do, but he has made sure that Eritrea is closed from the rest of the world. So even getting information from Eritrea is very, very difficult. And the other day, I think one of the former bishops of the Orthodox Church, which is one of the leading churches there in Eritrea, I think he was being held under house arrest because he was criticizing the government. And so I think over the weekend, he was completely stripped of he was fired from the church. And it is perceived that those directives must have come from the president himself. And is it about 2 months ago or over thereabout, he closed down all the health facilities that were being managed by Catholic Church because they come out and they're very vocal in regards to criticizing especially the human rights record by the government, President Afwerki's government, and he does not take criticism, period. He does not want to be criticized or to be corrected or for that. So it closed down 22 health centers that were serving the people of Eritrea that were run and manned by the Catholic Church. And so it's just a matter of time. Eritrea also, I believe, is a ticking time bomb. And when the people there will get fed up, the way Sudanese got fed up, the way South Sudanese got fed up, the way Biafrans are now fed up, the way the Anglophones are now fed up, I think is going to be real trouble for Afwerki. I never would have thought that former President Omar al-Bashir of Sudan would have left power that easily after, increased tension and protest in Khartoum there. I never imagined in my lifetime I'll see that happen. But that did happen, In Zimbabwe, I never imagined former President Robert Mugabe will be out of office in that fashion, but that did happen. So these leaders, I think these are some of examples they should be seeking to look at and learn from, and at least try to do right by their citizens. And sometimes right might mean them leaving the office, but dictators really don't understand that language. So John Kamba Fraser is saying South Sudan is deeply rooted with corruption and incompetence of failed leadership indeed. All right. And thanks again, Oka Ojake. All right. So now I want to thank you so much for your company. It's been lovely. Today we started a bit late. We normally start at 11 a.m. here in Nairobi, East African time. But today we started just a few minutes past midday because we had a bit of some technical issues we were taking care of. And Dr. Matsanga was not present. He had some very pressing matters that called for his attention, but thank you so much. And so in Kenya here, there is a court process right now continuing. CS for Treasury, Henry Rotich, his permanent secretary, Kamau Dhige, and Susan Jemtai, plus 25 others spent the night on police stations yesterday, and they have been arraigned in court to answer to a mega corruption scandal involving some dams here in Kenya. And so we will keep you up to date with that on our next broadcast. But for right now, I want to thank you so much for your company, and I want to thank you so much for even engaging with me this afternoon here from Nairobi, East African time. It is, let me see what the time, it is just a few minutes. I think it is 36 minutes past 1 p.m. here, I believe. So thank you so much, and I will see you in our next broadcast. My name is Miriam Ogut. Bye-bye for now.
Viewers, good morning. This morning, I want to address the issue of Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. The legacy of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya keeps on moving, keeps on going forward and forward. Since the handshake in 2018 that brought about the peace, the tranquility, the unity of purpose, President Uhuru's star has been. All over Africa, people are thinking of using the model that Kenya used to stop any form of violence, chaos on the streets after elections. As you know, all of you are aware that elections in Africa produce two things: after or before or after the voting. disputed elections. Winner takes it all. Loser doesn't accept the results. But the Kenyan model takes us miles and miles away from the normal type of democracy. The democracy, a negotiated format, a consensus format. A democracy that gives consensus a chance. A democracy that talks about the future of a country, the unity of a country, as opposed to a fragmented country, polarized country, where most African countries find themselves in. We have seen in the last 10 years or so, most of the elections in Africa have been contested by the opposition. Very few people in Africa, countries in Africa, where opposition has conceded defeat and come up to congratulate the winner. We have seen the South African model has worked very well. The Ghanaian model has worked so well. I don't see any other country in Africa where the models have worked well. I thought it would be Sierra Leone, but today we see Sierra Leone going back to the same ethnic tensions, as you can see from the reports that are circulating in the international media and the local media. So elections in Africa are contentious issues. They create a contentious position, create a departing point for the people of Africa, of that particular nation. The legacy of Uhuru Kenyatta, therefore, will be remembered for having brought the tranquility that we have today, the peace, the new format, the new tool of having a better organized civil Africa, an Africa without violence, an Africa without chaos after elections, when the opposition accepts to work for the interests of a nation, not personal interests. This has worked in Kenya, and thank you very much, Your Excellency President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, for the tenacity and the steadfastness that you have guided this handshake up to today. For those who want to mutilate the handshake, belittle the handshake, one lesson they should learn is to look at Libya. Libya was once a territory we all respected. It is no more. Let's keep the handshake and the legacy of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Thank you. Viewers, good morning.